Welcome to the ultimate derelict freighter and capital freighter guide in No Man's Sky. I'll be going over spawning, the loot available with what is consistent, as well as how to farm them to get exactly what you want, and a bunch of tips and tricks to help you do it as efficiently as possible, even as far as clearing a derelict freighter every 2 minutes without using any exploits or glitches. On top of that, covering the changes to your personal freighter, the new technology and how to get your freighter's hyperdrive range to well over 6,000. So let's get into the good stuff for this new Desolation update. We'll start with how to find them. There are 3 distinct ways to find derelict freighters. First, the casual super random way, which is to simply pulse in your ship and wait for points of interest to pop up and just hope that there is a derelict freighter. While this is time consuming in general, these random encounters are not all that random and can be gamed. Random space encounters happen on a timer, based on either when you loaded in or entered the system. If it is anything like ship spawning, we should rule out entering the system as a time starting point, and always start these by landing in the space station or your freighter to save and then reload to work off the time you loaded in. Once you've loaded into the game, that system's random space encounters timer is already in motion. It does not matter whether you are pulsing or not, this timer is counting in the background, reaching and passing points in time when, if you were pulsing, an encounter would appear. If you load in and start pulsing, then get an encounter trigger at say 45 seconds after you've loaded in. That encounter is something that will always happen at that time from when you loaded in, provided you are pulsing in your ship. But it will also always be the same encounter, such as a Dyson Sphere, derelict freighter or big space jellyfish. Though do note that the array of encounters does differ a little based on whether you are in a standard ship or a living ship. Because of how this works, we do have some systems that people have found where you make a save on the station and upon loading in, you jump in your ship and pulse, which will guarantee you a specific space encounter. Ones that are recorded for farming are usually living ship eggs to get your living ship tech, or space eyes to get some quicksilver. Well, you could do the same for derelict freighters, though there are a number of things you'll want to take into consideration before setting up a free derelict freighter farming system, which we'll go into shortly, but it would still be very useful for cheaply increasing your freighter storage or just obtaining lots of basic loot. A true golden egg derelict freighter encounter system will be a long time coming, but when it does, it will be pretty darn swish. The next method of finding derelict freighters is through the new anomaly detector item. These are found when shooting asteroids in space. They are quite rare, so may take several minutes to get one, but they are an item that when used will trigger a space encounter a few seconds after using your pulse drive. The list of encounters this can trigger is quite long however, and while it does include derelict freighters, it includes so many others that it would be quite some effort to consistently spawn them, but it is possible. This is because while it is on a timer of sorts, meaning if you use it then pulse at the same time when you load it in, you can indeed get the same encounter to spawn, but it is more difficult as this time you are manually controlling the trigger point. So while a cool new item, these are not generally the best use for derelicts as they are both a little tedious to obtain en masse and tricky to consistently use to this end. The third and final method of finding derelict freighters is to use an emergency broadcast receiver. Upon using this item and then starting up your pulse drive, you will find a derelict freighter in a few seconds. You can get one of these per week for free from Helios on the anomaly, and even occasionally see them as rewards from top tier Nexus missions, but your primary option is to purchase them from a scrap dealer on space stations. The first one will cost you 5 million units, in the grand scheme of things, nice and cheap. The second a cool 10 mil. The third is 20 mil, and the fourth and everyone after it will be 30 million units. Before you clutch your pearls too hard, the pricing of them does reset every day back to 5 million. This means that for those who want to grind like crazy, you're going to have to shell out, but for those who like the more chilled approach, it's not so bad. On that note, while testing for this guide, I burned through more than 3 billion units. Luckily, I had my trusty stasis device farm to fund it. If you want the most powerful and fully legit unit making farm in the verse, check out the stasis device mega guide. A huge amount of info, but once you know it all, the farm itself is pretty simple to set up, and could be done inside 12 hours from a new safe start. Once you've found a derelict freighter, landed and entered the airlock, you will need to interact with the console. This console will unlock the main entry to the derelict freighter. If you use the receiver to find it, this will lock in that receiver and take it from you in exchange for opening the door. Don't worry about the teleporter for the moment, that is your teleport point back to the start for when you are leaving. There is also a supply cache next to the airlock door that will provide you with 3 repair kits, ferrite dust, condensed carbon and sodium. These are very basic but useful supplies that you could take whether you enter or not and are generally worth taking. These new repair kits added with the update are a fantastic idea, especially for black hole travellers, who can now more easily use ships with more tech in them without having a tedious fixing session afterwards. You'll also notice a heating unit next to the console. This can be interacted with to turn it on and heat its immediate area. Derelict Freighters are pretty darn cold and just by default will slowly sap your hazard protection. But these heaters allow for a respite to regain your hazard protection charge, or if using upgrades, stop sapping them. You'll find them throughout the freighter. After opening the door, you have started the Lost in Space mission. This mission will tell you how many zones are in the derelict, a zone being a room. The size of the room makes no difference. A 7-zone freighter could be larger in actual combined space than a 12-zone freighter. The layout is somewhat linear. If there are 2 doors to choose from, only one of those doors will lead further into the greater areas of the freighter, so be sure to check as you go and clear side rooms before moving on. It is very worth noting here that doors that have a circle and an arrow above them, at least usually in pink, are dead ends, which makes it nice and easy to work out these side rooms and closets from a glance. Each room will have various cases, crates, lockers and floating canisters that can be looted. Each of these types has their own loot tables, which we will go over in the loot section. There are very rare special items that can be looted, such as ships in a small inner bay, so be sure to check everything if you are after the Swiss general loot. To ensure you don't miss things, use a wave scanner regularly to highlight lootable objects. In the rooms there are also log snippets. These snippets contain procedurally generated lore for that freighter, giving hints on its crew, various dealings they had, as well as clues to what caused everything to go wrong. Rooms will also often have some sort of enemy, but I won't really go into much detail about the enemies, as it won't really help you knowing, and will just ruin any cool surprise encounters you may have. In 3 of however many zones Derelict has, there are special consoles. The first one you encounter will be a crew manifest console. This will allow you to obtain the crew manifest, which can later be handed in at the space station for nanites or guild reputation. The second of the 3 is the captain's log console. This will require a credential to pass. You can obtain this credential by searching through the log snippets found in the derelict. So if all you are after are the console items, then just check the log snippets until you get a credential. With the credential you can move through the menu on this console and obtain the captain's log, which can also be traded at the space station for nanites or guild rep. The last of the consoles is found in the final room. This console allows you to pick between 3 rewards. You can either have a bulkhead, which can be used to increase your freighter storage by 1, a piece of freighter procedural technology, which can be multiple things, which I'll go into fully in the freighter technology section, or nanites. The nanites option is a fairly disappointing 400 to 600 nanites. Personally, I think this should be a few thousand considering the cost and time to get one of these derelicts. Each of these consoles has a teleporter next to it. Once you activate them, they will work as a small network allowing you to travel between them and the airlock. Once you head back to your ship and leave the freighter, one of 2 things will happen. If you obtain the manifest and the captain's log from the consoles, you'll be prompted to head to the space station and hand them in for either nanite or guild reputation, and until you do, you may not scan for another derelict freighter. If you did not collect either of those 2 items, you will not need to head to a space station and can just carry on with your day, whether you wish to scan again or not. One thing of note here, which will probably be fixed, but until then I experienced a lock on my ability to scan for derelict freighters, as I had only collected the manifest and not the captain's log. When handing it in, the game must have assumed I had the log, and while the quest had gone, the receivers were jammed and could not be used. To fix this, I joined Dark Lord Zelric's game and he used a receiver that I went with him onto, entering this new derelict to reset my quest and allowed me to continue on. In summary, to recap over all of this information and add a little extra, when you use an emergency broadcast receiver, you can enter Pulse to get a derelict freighter encounter nice and quickly. If you ignored the encounter, another will follow. If you drop out of pulse to the encounter but never use the receiver to open the airlock, upon pulsing away the receiver will revert back from being active and will be available to use for scanning again. Once you enter the airlock using the receiver, you have paid your entry fee and may continue or leave, but the receiver has now been used. You can loot as much as you like inside, but if you interact with either the first or second console and obtain either or both the manifest and the captain's log, you will have to visit the space station before finding another derelict via the use of a receiver. You can ignore everything else and just go straight to the final console for the bulkhead or freighter tech. There are a number of things with derelict freighters that are consistent in all kinds of ways. The first being that a derelict freighter is mostly consistent to its system. When you find a derelict freighter, that is that system's derelict freighter, meaning that every freighter you find in that system will be almost identical to that one. The name will be the same, the rooms and even all placement of furniture, lootable objects and snippets will be in the same place. The loot itself will not be the same. Enemy types and numbers will be the same, and the overall lore found will also be the same. The value in nanites of the manifest and captain's log will always be the same when trading to the scrapper. The most significant consistency, however, is that the class of the freighter technology module from the final console will always be the same class, but not the same type, and on top of this, the stats of the technology when installed will always be the same, which matters for both the fuel and hyperdrive tech. This consistency allows us crazy NMS nerds to document to our heart's content, but also for us to efficiently farm the highly priced top stat S-Class tech to upgrade our shiny freighters. Even better is a discovery I made a little while into testing all this, that the class of the final tech is not just consistent to that freighter in that system, but is defined via the galactic coordinate, meaning that all systems of that exact galactic coordinate in all galaxies are of that class. If you have found an S-Class giving derelict in the 56th galaxy, then that portal address you share will be valid for all galaxies. Over the different galaxies, the designs and layout of the rooms will be different, but it would seem the amount of rooms is consistent as well as the name of the freighter. There are several different loot tables for derelict freighters and they give some really cool stuff. The first is just the emergency supplies you can request from the airlock console. This will provide you with 4,000 to 6,000 ammo, 3 oxygen capsules and 3 ion batteries, which if you are in need of some stuff to keep you going, it is a nice little touch. Then there is a supply crate by the door, which I mentioned before has 3 repair kits, some ferrite dust, condensed carbon and sodium. Throughout the freighter you will see floating glowing canisters. These will either give you 10 to 25 oxygen or the same quantity in sodium. Good for little top-ups if you're taking your time. Next are the flat blue and grey cases. These will offer either nanites or units at a 40% chance each for a paltry number, though if you are lucky you'll get a much higher amount of nanites with a 10% roughly chance of getting 50 to 200. And if you are super lucky there is a slightly under 1% chance of a procedural treasure item, a type of document. Then we have the big blue and grey crates. These have a much larger looting pool and there's some really nice stuff in them. A 9% chance of getting a procedural technology module, which is one of 4, pulse engine, hyperdrive, deflector shield and photon cannon, so all for your standard ship. And each module has a 55% chance of being C class, 25 for B, 15 for A and 5% for S. A 6% chance of getting one of 4 procedural treasure items, either ancient bones, salvage, biological sample or deep sea horror item. 4% chance of getting a salvage frigate module, which is pretty great for those just now sorting out their freighter tech. Possible small amount of ammo. 8% chance each to get 1, 2, 3 storm crystals, larval cores, Hadal cores or hypnotic eyes, which are some really great and useful items. Interestingly, it says 1 to 3, but I've only ever gotten 2 at a time, so some of these ranges don't have weighting curves. And finally, a 38% chance of getting 1 to 3, though it has always been 3 for me, of one of these 7 different types of trade items. These are the top tier ones worth 50,000 units of base, which with these trade items, if sold in the correct place, can go for a whole lot more. Next are the blue and grey lockers, which have some pretty sweet items in them too. 4.5% chance of getting some unstable plasma, but also a 4.5% chance of getting one of 10 different procedural tech modules for multi-tool and exosuit. These are random class, though most weigh heavily to C class, as you'd expect, with some being guaranteed A or S. Small chance at a small amount of ammo, units or nanites. 27% chance of getting one of 6 of the different race items like Viking Dagger, Korvax Convergence Cubes, etc. 32% chance of getting a tier 1 trade item, which personally I would just throw away, as if you are running these and will run out of space, these are the first to throw. But the last thing possible from lockers is the most interesting. You can get Nip Nip Buds at a 4.5% chance, which makes it fairly regular to find them at least once per freighter. This is really interesting, as until now for some time the only way to obtain Nip Nip Buds, which are required for growing them, was to either harvest them from another player's farm or just hope that you find them as a random rare reward from Nexus missions. Having them spawn in these lockers is a far more consistent means of obtaining them for your less than kosher agricultural practices. Now, the last table I want to go over before we get to the final reward stuff is a table that I think is the right one, but I'm not 100%. This is for any ships you find in freighter bays inside the Derelict dungeons, as these can be salvaged from too. If I'm correct, then there is a 50% chance to get a procedural salvage treasure item, and a 50% chance to get one of 4 procedural ship tech modules. Even better is that these modules have a way higher chance than normal of being S-class. They have a 66% chance of A-class and a 33% chance of being S-class, meaning they are always worth grabbing, as either way that's a nice little bit of nanite in your pocket. All of these loot tables can be found on my website, so check the pinned comment for a link to that. The only loot left to go over is what you get from the engineering console, which is the last prize. You get the choice of either a procedural freighter technology, a bulkhead for expanding your freighter main or technology inventory by 1 slot, or some nanites. The nanites are fairly awful and between 400 and 600. There's a lot to go over with the procedural tech and bulkhead, so they have their own sections. I'll rip this band-aid off nice and fast. You'll want to get a new freighter. This is primarily due to some hidden changes that were made to freighter spawning, that makes every freighter obtained before the Desolation update worse in Hyperdrive bonus than the worst A class that can currently spawn. Not only this, but you'll definitely want an S class, as a class seems to dictate the degree that you can expand its inventory. Previously, S-class freighters had a hyperdrive bonus of between 30 and 40%, but this range wasn't quite that simple and was always displayed as 39%, and via the use of a save editor could be seen as somewhere around the 39.8 to 39.99 territory. The Desolation update increased this to a range of 60 to 80% hyperdrive bonus for S-class freighters. This is kind of insane, as it makes the maximum possible light year range for an S-class capital freighter around 6,347.5, making them far more viable than ever before for travelling long distance in. The general methods for obtaining freighters have not changed, only the stats they now spawn with, so I won't go into spawning mechanics and such in too much detail in this video, but a freighter mega guide has now been pushed up in priority big time, as there is a whole lot to go over. But I will give some super basic step by step to hunting them. Firstly, you will want to find a system that has the model of capital freighter you want. These are regularly posted on Reddit and in Discord, including mine. Each system has a single model of capital freighter. Capital freighter is the one you want, as they are bigger than the standard. They only spawn once every 3 hours of gameplay and 5 warps. They will spawn on the 5th warp in whatever system you warp to, provided you've done the 3 hours first. You'll want that system to be a high economy strength system, which can be seen as 3-star, as they have a 2% chance of spawning ships and freighters as S-class. Medium only 1% and low have a 0% chance. When you enter the system with the battle going on, fly immediately to the space station, land and get out to autosave, then head out and fight the pirates. You may also wish to make a manual save before warping. Landing on a freighter that is NPC owned will not autosave, so land after the battle and scan the freighter with your visor to check its class. If it is not S-class, reload and do the fight again. It is an exploit to do this, but the alternative would cost you on average 150 hours of gameplay and 250 warps to see a single S-Class, so it is widely regarded to be a pretty innocent exploit. You'll want to check the Hyperdrive range, though I have a feeling the S-Class will always be the 79 to 80% on the Hyperdrive bonus, either that or Lava Lamp 64, whose new freighter I confirmed these stats with was just oh so insanely lucky. A-Class and below appear to have a proper working range, as KJPC Gaming's recent A-Class had around 54% bonus out of a range of between 40 and 60. Also make sure you have up to 178 million units on you, as while your first freighter is free and you can pass over the initial non-capital freighter that pops up in a battle on a new save and get a proper capital freighter for free afterwards, if you already have a freighter, the next will cost you. No Man's Sky Desolation gave us the ability to expand our freighter main and technology storage, which is pretty darn swish. The only way to do this as of this guide being released is via the use of bulkheads with your freighter bridges upgrade terminal. Bulkheads can be chosen as a reward from the final console in a Derelict Freighter mini dungeon. You'll need one bulkhead per slot, so for example if you have a 34 slot S-Class capital freighter with 9 technology slots, you'll need 26 bulkheads to fully expand the freighter to 48 main and 21 technology. But it's not quite that simple. The maximum slots a freighter can be expanded to depend on its class. C-Class can have a maximum of 24 main slots and 7 technology. B-Class can be upgraded to 32 main slots and 7 technology. A-Class can go to 40 and 14, while S-Class can go up to 48 slots in the main and 21 in the technology. Huge reason to go for S-Class there, among others. Freighter technology has been hugely increased in the Desolation update, so let's go over it. I'm going to assume you all know about the basic Hyperdrive technology, which are the main unit, the CB and A-Class range upgrades that give 200, 300 and 800 light year range respectively, and the 3 chromatic drives which all give 50 light years and allow for travel in their respective stellar classes. These tech are blueprint tech, which you can get the blueprint for and craft. These blueprints are purchased on your freighter's bridge from the upgrade terminal with salvage frigate modules. These modules can be found on derelicts, so you may as well do them for your freighter's tech first and hopefully get enough from looting blue crates, but if you don't, the fastest way to get them is by attacking the pods of NPC freighter fleets in the system. If you equip a long range weapon like the Cyclotron or even Photon Cannon and target the pods, you'll see what's inside. Look for the salvage frigate module pods and blast them to get the upgrade. Take some shielding items with you and ignore the sentinels that defend the freighters, as if you take them out, more will follow. Now you're set, there are 7 different new types of freighter procedural technology. The first are the 4 different frigate types, so trade, combat, exploration and mining. These upgrades will give you huge bonuses to your frigates when they go on expeditions. Next are fuel and speed frigate upgrades. These will increase the fuel efficiency and speed of your fleet, allowing them to both cost less to send out, as well as move more quickly and so pick up more loot during their missions. Lastly are the freighter hyperdrive upgrades. These, as you may assume, increase your hyperdrive range. As with other inventories, you can have 3 of each in both the main and technology inventories. These freighter technology do not work in the usual procedural technology way. When you use one, it does not give you the stats based on a seed specific to your character, but instead specific to the system you got it from. Not only will they have the derelict's name in their name and description, but also the stats that they give will always be the same if gathered from the same derelict. This does not matter for the immediately nerfed mining, trading, combat, exploration and speed technology, which are all always 15%. The fuel has a range between 15 and 20% and the hyperdrive between 200 and 250 light year range, with the warp cell efficiency always being 100%. With that in mind, the best system will not only be the one that always gives S-Class modules, but also gives S-Class modules where the hyperdrive range is 250 and the fuel efficiency is 20%. If we can find a system that does both of these at max, we can then check through the various galaxies to find a derelict freighter layout that is easiest to farm, and we have ourselves a god roll. The most important by far out of all of these technologies are first the freighter hyperdrives. as these increase your range massively with all 6 S-Class installed. Then I would say the fuel efficiency, as grinding freighter fuel takes game time, with the speed upgrades close behind and then the other 4. All 7 as of publishing this video can primarily be obtained through the Derelict Freighters final console, or of course through trading with other players, but it does seem as though they can be occasionally found elsewhere, as Golden Gek found one in a historic dig site. Before we get to the speed running of Derelict Freighters, let's look at the 3 pimped out layouts for your freighter tech to get the most out of your tech and space. Which layout you will want for your freighter technology will depend on what you value most. Firstly, here we have the purely technology layout that uses all 21 slots of the technology, but not main inventory slots for maximum storage. It favours maximum hyperdrive ability when confined to just the technology with the maximum efficiency layouts for adjacency bonuses. The hyperdrive range, shown as 4889.8, is with a 79.9% hyperdrive bonus, which I edited in just for testing the numbers, as this is an Alice Rises obtained freighter. Secondary focus on the fuel and speed upgrades to have a full 3 of each, and the matter beam, as it is just such an insanely useful bit of tech, the ability to properly utilise its main inventory during crafting and exploring is too good to not have it. Then 2 for trade, 1 for combat and 1 for mining. You may wish to switch those 4 around and fully lean to a specific stat that maybe you are weak in, or just want more minerals for your mining expeditions and more. The next layout is the All Out, which features the maximum possible technologies, though suffers a very slight decrease in the maximum possible light year range in order to utilise the technology's 21 slots, as 3 of each tech. The main inventory has 29 of its 48 slots fully in use by the tech, and while the light year range is a maximum you'll get without that little extra in the tech inventory at 6321.5, the fleet coordination shown in these screenshots is far from the maximum, probably by about 29 or so points, as while I edited the hyperdrive range to find out the maximum values, I did not edit the fleet coordination, which is also almost double in the new freighters. The last is a balanced, which is what I'll generally go for myself. This maximises fully on hyperdrive as well as fuel efficiency and speed, while also giving a solid nod to the 4 frigate attributes. 3 for trading and mining, with 2 for combat and exploration is a nice mix. I may add 3 mining into the main later on as I start using my fleet more, in anticipation for the Freighter Maker Guide and its lengthy research process. A note to these layouts is that of course you don't need to do any of these, they are just meant as a starting block to work with. That being said, the hyperdrive's arrangement is specific and could do with an explanation. Adjacency bonuses are a thing in this game, meaning that similar tech that touches each other buff each other. The more sides that touch familiar tech, the bigger the buff. The simplest way to look at this specific situation is by priority. We have a 3x3 block and a 2x2. The centre of the 3x3 has all 4 sides being touched, so is the best spot. The middle sides of that 3x3 have 3 sides being touched, so are the next best locations. And the corners of the 3x3 have equal value to all spots in the 2x2. So to start with the 2x2, this must have 3 S-Class modules, as you can have 3 per inventory, but for the maximum efficiency you could add 1 more to increase the sides touch total by 4, so add the weakest extra module to form that block, which is one of the 50 light year chromatic drives. Now we just have the 3x3. The centre is the best position, so the 800 light year upgrade goes there. Then the 4 middle sides, so whack the 300 light year upgrade and all 3 S-Class upgrades in those. The corners can have the remaining 200 light year blueprint, 250 light year chromatic drives in the main unit. That while 100 light years, it doesn't receive as large of a bonus as the others. So that is just the thought process behind arranging these layouts. For this, the basic idea is to get to the end point only, get your bulkhead or tech and move on to the next. With that in mind, we will ignore everything else, more than anything ignoring the manifesting captain's log, as getting even one of those will require us to visit the space station between derelicts. For my farming runs, I use this sweet find by Alan Estrada. He's a great dude who hangs out in the live chat and Discord and shared this great find with us, so thank you very kindly buddy, it saved me a whole lot of time. This particular fighter is in the Icelandic Galaxy and sports a 19% fuel tech stat and 245 light year tech stats. And yes, as I said earlier, the same system in Euclid will have a guaranteed S-Class freighter tech at the end, but the Euclid one is a fairly terrible layout that requires 4 ladders, 2 of which go up, so cannot be avoided by just dropping. My run was to land, go straight to the airlock, head to the far door, then curve around the right side in the next room, easily avoiding the defences, then take a sharp left to the door on the other side, and then you are in front of the final console. This is an extremely quick derelict that requires no fighting and is very straightforward. You then just teleport to the airlock and fly off to the next one. Some tips on keeping things tight. The NMS shuffle makes things about half the time or less once inside the derelict. To shuffle, you hold down melee, hold down to move forward and repeatedly tap to reload your weapon, so you must have a weapon that uses ammo and in a state of being able to reload. As these are such tight quarters, I'd recommend aiming well and pulsing bouts of the reload button so you don't fly into things and get caught on corners. Also know that this is risky, though I have never had an issue while inside the derelict and have shuffled this run 45 times or so. I have had several instances where shuffling on the landing pad and path leading to the airlock resulted in me being flung from the derelict with absolutely no way of getting back. The one time it happened, I had collected a whole lot of modules since saving last, so took the death. It took about 5 to 10 minutes due to my gear and the slow rate of death in this situation, but I did have some fun blowing away asteroids with my multi-tool. Thank you fine people for watching. This was a big one. Huge thank you to the US Council who helped me test a whole bunch of this stuff, and a shout out to Spirit who informed me of something I had tragically missed. If you haven't yet, consider subscribing for more No Man's Sky news, guides, let's plays and live streams. If you like this kind of stuff and want to help support my work, I have a Patreon, YouTube memberships and Teespring store, but sharing and liking is also a super awesome way to help out. Lastly, we have a pretty sweet Discord as well as a website full of huge amounts of information and helpful tools, all in the pinned comment. Have a fantabulously ecstatic day.